right off the bat, a lot of Filipinos are concerned about this campaign promise that Donald Trump said, I'm going to take illegal immigrants out. He's going to be stricter in terms of the immigration process. How worried should our kababayans be in the U.S.?
Well, thank you, TJ, for having me on your show. Just want to say, first off, I'm not speaking on behalf of the President-elect Trump.
You're an independent immigration lawyer.
Actually, independent immigration lawyer. A lot of this is something called, as we know, campaign rhetoric. Okay. Now, as the president, we have three branches of government. We, as you know, we have our executive, our legislative, and our judicial. Okay. Our Constitution was created for the sole purpose of preventing a president from becoming a dictator and doing acts as you just mentioned. I really feel a lot of this was simply nothing more than campaign rhetoric. So there really is nothing to be afraid of. Now, first of all, we have two types of things. We have legal and illegal. Okay. If you were there legally, you have nothing to worry about.
Nothing at all.
If you were there legally, even if you were there illegally, you were still afforded due process under our Constitution, meaning they just can't round you up this morning and deport you the next day. You have to be afforded due process. That means you must be the right to be heard in front of an immigration judge. You must be able to allow to present evidence. You must be able to give an argument to prevent you from being deported. So a lot of this, I think, is a lot of fear, but I really think that people just need to take a calm down, breathe. If you're there, don't cancel your Christmas plans. If you're going for Disney World this Christmas, if you have an immigrant petition, don't cancel it. If you are going as an investor, don't cancel your investment plans. Simply take it step by step and let's wait and see what happens.
We've had, first of all, we have millions of Filipinos in the U.S. and admittedly there's a significant number of them that are what we call the TNT.
Tago non-tago.
The illegal immigrants. During the Obama administration, there was the DREAM Act. So that gave them a sigh of relief. Like, hey, maybe there is a chance for us to be getting some sort of an amnesty to stay and be legitimate in the country. Will that change? I mean, what kind of power does Trump have, as you said, aside from the checks and balances of the Congress and the Supreme Court and the Senate? What can he do on his own as president? Is that what Obama did? Can he take that away?
Okay, the DREAM Act that you mentioned before, the DREAM Act was passed through executive order. Which bypassed Congress altogether. So yes, as the president, a new president can come in and discard those executive orders. For example, President Bush did that on his first day in office back in 2001. So yes, that is a possibility. But unfortunately, we have to look at the reality that people under the DREAM Act were in the United States illegally to begin with. So yes, that is a possibility. But still, like I said before, that doesn't eliminate the right. A President-elect Trump, once he becomes President Trump in January, still cannot give an executive order to discard due process.
So whatever the situation is, as they are illegal immigrants, they can't just be picked up and sent across the border.
No, not at all. You must be allowed to be given in front of an immigration judge and a right to be heard.
What are their chances, if they're going to go through due process, what are their chances to prove that they deserve to stay? If you said that obviously they are illegal in the first place, they were not petitioned, they were not granted an immigrant visa, is there any hope, or is this just going to delay the inevitable?
Well, I think we need to take a wait-and-see approach right now. Well, one thing about when you deport somebody, it costs time and money. Immigration hearings are expensive, Holding someone in an immigration detention cell is expensive. Many people who have gone tago non-tago have simply, like I said, they simply remain tago non-tago, and if they do come out of the woodworks, what happens is it takes time to get them deported. And sometimes the immigration judge will just keep on delaying it because the docket can last for years. They don't have the time, they don't have the resources for mass deportation.
Give us an idea, how long does this take? I mean, you've handled cases like these, I'm sure.
Well, I handle cases, I handle cases for Filipinos going to the U.S. I don't handle cases inside the United States.
But you've heard.
But it takes years.
It takes years.
Years for someone to be deported.
So when they're rounded up, and
unless the only exception is TJ, unless if they've been arrested for a criminal offense.
Right. So when you say that they're picked up as an illegal immigrant, they're going to go through the deportation case. Are they detained somewhere, like in
sometimes they're temporarily detained, but often they're released on their own recognizance and just say, "Come back for your hearing."
And then so that's when the due process takes over.
Due process is afforded to them the minute they're arrested.
All right. Will it be different for, let's say, senior citizens? Will there be some kind of empathy or sympathy by the courts and say, okay, you're like 95 years old, you're an illegal immigrant, but we will not waste our time in saying you got to leave the country?
That's up to the discretion of the immigration judge.
Okay, but that is a possibility.
Absolutely.
It is. So it's not going to be a hard and fast rule that just because you're an illegal immigrant, you got to leave the country.
No, there will not be. I don't foresee a hard and fast rule approaching. I think everything will take consideration. For example, people who are there, let's say, for example, there's a lot of people come in, whether from the Philippines or from Mexico or from Central America, from China, from India, we regardless, okay? But many of those people have also married U.S. citizens and have U.S. citizen children right now. Sympathy takes effect as well. Immigration judges are also human beings.
All right.
They're not just going to send somebody across the border to Mexico and say, okay, you're done. Okay. You broke our law, you're finished. Now, the only exception, TJ, is if they've been arrested.
Right.
And if they're in jail. If somebody commits a serious felony, that's a whole different story.
Okay.
But if you're obeying the law, no problem. You should not. You should be fine. But like I said before, you shouldn't have been illegal to begin with.
Technically speaking, a lot of these illegal immigrants who stay as TNT also work. And is that breaking the law? That they're working without the right necessary papers, they're not paying the right taxes? You said that that might be the exception, that if they had a felony. But is that a crime enough?
Interesting enough, if you're there illegally, you can't get an employment authorization.
Right.
But they pay taxes anyway. So it's one of these really weird situations like, well, you're there illegally, but you're paying taxes.
Right.
It's like, well, how do we balance this scenario?
Okay, so in that case, it's not necessarily that they've broken the law in terms of I'm not supposed to be working, but
you are paying taxes anyway.
Right, exactly. Okay. On the other end, this is more to your expertise, Filipinos here applying to migrate there, being petitioned. Should they have any concerns and worries? I mean, some have said that, oh, maybe Trump is an anti-immigration, period, or is he just anti-illegal immigrants? How should they be thinking about this?
From a personal perspective, I think President-elect Trump is simply anti-illegal immigration.
Okay.
I don't see any problems right now with Filipinos applying for visas. Don't forget, I've been in this country for 13 years.
13 years,
okay?
yeah.
13 years ago, it was very difficult for a Filipino to get an American visa. It just was.
Why so? Why was it much more
Because
difficult?
I think it's because the economy was in a downside, and more people had a reason to not return.
Okay.
Now you're seeing all these Filipino, let's say, people who work in the BPO business, or they work in the KPO business, or they're establishing companies out here, and they want to send their workers temporarily. Look, it's a great life. Why would you want to live? Why wouldn't you want to return? And you're seeing so many more people returning that it gives credibility to the American Embassy in Manila to say, let's give more visas.
Okay. Are you already hearing of these concerns from your clients? I'm sure you've got a lot of cases out there who, it takes time to apply for immigration, and for those who are petitioned. Did they call you right away? Attorney Ryan, what's happening? I mean, what's the sentiment you're getting?
I had some people call me, but I simply relayed their concerns and say, look, wait and see what happens. There is nothing we can do at this very moment, okay? I will also like to make a mention that from the cabinet makeup that I'm looking at right now, I haven't seen any cabinet officials that would remotely suggest being anti-immigration, being an isolationist, closing down the borders. The people who are being floated around as names, these are only names yet. We haven't President-elect Trump first has to appoint a chief of staff, which he hasn't even done yet. So let's wait for the chief of staff, which should be done any day now, and then we'll see the cabinet makeup for the names that are being floated.
How soon do you think he can make these, concrete steps? I mean, there's been talk that on day one he's going to order such and such for these deportation of these 3 million illegal immigrants.
If that's the case, what I think on day one, most likely what would happen was he would discard executive orders that were authorized by President Obama. But still, due process still controls, regardless of an executive order. These executive orders were meant to pretty much regularize people there illegally and take into consideration, look, they're members of the community, they pay taxes, many of them might have even served in the military. That's what they did. They got high school diplomas, they went to college. So even if we discard the executive orders altogether, like the DREAM Act, like DACA, DAPO had a situation that was actually struck down by our Supreme Court because of a deadlock decision. There was 8-8 after Justice Anton Scalia passed away this year. That still due process cannot be taken away from these people who have gone taco, non-taco.
Do you see the possibility that illegal immigrants in the U.S. now would worry too much, that they'll just say, okay, I'm going to not waste my time and not waste my money in terms of I'll have, to go through the process and probably hire a lawyer and all that, pack my bags and go?
I think there will be some, and I think some people are doing it, but I think me being on your show today is to simply ease concerns. Don't act irrationally. Wait and see what happens. Right now, there is nothing we can do right now. Right now, simply, I would say if someone's illegal, you should see a lawyer regardless. Regardless, this should have been done years ago. So you should always see a lawyer and get counsel to see what your rights and remedies are.
You mentioned that. What are these remedies? Some of them think that, oh no, I overstayed, I didn't really intend to, I fell in love or whatever, I happily enjoyed my time with my family. Are there any legal remedies really still for that? Prior to what Trump had pronounced, what was the case in terms of possibly getting forgiven for staying too long and given the chance to stay?
Okay, yes, there are some remedies right now. I can go over a few of them right now. Basically, if somebody overstays in the United States for more than 6 months and less than a year, they're subject to a 3-year bar from the United States. If they're in the United States for more than a year illegally, they're subject to a 10-year bar. However, you have to file, and then if you were, let's say, for example, you have a family in the United States, then you have to return to your home country and apply for a visa, okay? And you have to file for a waiver of inadmissibility because you are considered to be inadmissible. However, before, and these remedies are still there, and these were passed by legislation, you can file a provisional waiver before you leave the United States to streamline the process. It's called something called an I-601A form, and so that helps you streamline the process if you were there illegally. But of course, that only applies if you're there illegally, didn't commit any crimes of inadmissibility.
Right. Would getting a visa be harder now? And I'll add to that question, will it be harder if you have a relative who is an illegal immigrant? Okay,
I would say no. I've helped many clients before who are there illegally. I mean, it depends what type of relative we have here. Okay, is it a second cousin, or is it your mother, or is it your wife?
So that matters.
It matters substantially, yes.
Actually, I know of a case of a father whose daughter, not necessarily is an illegal immigrant, but went through what they call the back door, went as a tourist, got a job, and then she's okay.
And that happens a lot.
It happens a lot, yes. So would that be stricter in this case nowadays if there will be this, actions by President-elect Trump or President Trump eventually to, be stricter on illegal immigrants? Will that have a trickle-down effect to the relatives applying for even just for tourist visas?
Are we talking about if we're talking about immigrant visas, people who are going there permanently, the answer would be no. But if you're talking about non-immigrant visas, non-immigrant, let's say tourist visas, visitor visas in the United States, then unfortunately, what the thing is, we have something called consular non-reviewability, which means the consular officer interviewing the applicant has discretion of whether or not they want to approve this visa. And I think that is maybe using their senses and say, look, I just doesn't pass my smell test. I have to refuse this visa.
All right. And interesting enough, you mentioned that it's a bit of a smell test.
So as lawyers, we call them our spidey senses.
Spidey senses. So when the U.S. government will have these directives and the changes in direction in terms of immigration, is that something that they tell the consuls and say, we got to be stricter now. You got to ask them the tougher questions. You got to filter through these applicants more.
Well, that's always been the case to answer tougher questions. This is nothing new. I don't see anything really new coming out under President Trump. This has always been the case to ask tough questions. It's always been the case to do diligence. But here's something also to consider. You only have, especially in Manila, this is one of the world's largest embassies in terms of visas. We are the world's second largest immigrant visa. Immigrants, right behind Mexico. We are one of the largest visa posts for visitor visas. A consular officer has less than 2 minutes to make a decision.
2 minutes.
So why do some people say they don't look at my documents? Because they don't have the time to look at your documents. They simply looked at your online application you fill out, which is called the DS-160 online application, and they said, can I trust this person? If it's a yes, great. If it's a no, reapply.
Interesting. That's how short of a time they actually have.
2 minutes. Up to 2 minutes.
Wow.
Up to 2 minutes. No more.
Interesting. All right. Well, but again, the general message from Attorney Ryan is don't panic.
Don't panic
right now.
Stay the course. Don't cancel your plans.
All right.
Remain calm and wait and see.
And if you have any concerns, seek a lawyer's advice right now to see what your options will be.
Seek a lawyer to see what remedies you have available.
Attorney Ryan, thank you so much for joining us, and we'll probably have you back in the show eventually as well as we talk more about these issues. Thank you.
Thank you, Jay.
Thank you. All right.